before. So thank you for sharing that. I thought it was amazing. I want to thank also all of you for being here. This is a really tough topic. The concept is we all worry about the stigma of mental health. We're all concerned about the fact, gosh, I'm really depressed today, or I have so much going on in my personal life. How can I possibly do my job? But I cannot tell anyone about it because of the stigma attached, because of the shaming, because of the blaming, because of the fact that people are going to judge me, and I don't wish to be judged. A really good example is a nurse colleague of mine who was a CNO at a major American university. Did really well, was emotionally drained to the point of clinical depression. Had to take a sabbatical, took off for 6 months, came back to work allegedly to the same position, to the same status, to the same everything. And within 8 months of the time that he returned to work, we all know what happened. He was replaced. Why does that happen? How can that happen? How can we allow it to happen when in fact we're supposed to be helping one another? We're supposed to be taking care of one another. We're not supposed to be blaming. My co-presenter is also not here today, and she's not here because she put family first. Is there stigma associated with that? That her mom had a horrific accident and she had to cancel at the last minute and say, I'm really sorry, I can't come, here are my notes. This was Friday. Here are my notes. You know, I've got to take care of my family, and that's what we do. The challenge is we didn't always know we were supposed to do that. Because I think through the bulk of my career, I didn't do that. I worked my 100 hours a week, 3 countries a week in Eastern Europe, 2 weeks out of every month for 12 years. Until I realized that if I didn't get a life, I wasn't going to have a life. And so I quit my job and went to work for myself so that I could control my own hours and my mental status. But we don't all have that privilege. And it's a real hard awakening. It's an aha moment when we realize that we need to put ourselves first, because Stigma has always said for years and years and years, you cannot drink from an empty cup. But when are we going to fill the cup so that we can drink from it? So this session is really about overcoming the stigma and using a framework with which I've worked for probably about 3 years now, which I find really fascinating from a standpoint of taking us to a whole new level. And so disclosures, no financial, whatever, interests, nothing to disclose, no commercial interest whatsoever. I want you to know that this is a psychologically safe environment. Everything that we say in this room is just between us. No one is recording, no big brother is listening, no one is looking. There is no one to basically
I'm recording,
say,
but only for you.
Oh, thank you. There is no one to say that we're doing something that is in fact inappropriate. What is a psychologically safe environment? A psychologically safe environment, the term was coined by Amy Edmondson, who is from Harvard University, who talked about that idea of having an environment in which we could speak up and speak out. Nurses need to be able to do that, to be able to be heard, to be able to have a voice. And today's space is in fact psychologically safe. I want you to understand that. The ANA Code of Ethics, this note came from my colleague, includes that nurses must advocate for health equity for all, including themselves, and including when the nurse is the patient. And be mindful of the fact that Stigma, of course, is an international organization, and people have various opinions, various scopes of practice. Things are different, they're not all the same, but we need to be receptive of that and considerate of it. So the behavioral objectives, to talk about this global mental health crisis, to reimagine the role by asking questions, by brainstorming, and to leverage the 4 Ws framework, which I'm really happy to share with you. So, nurses make up the largest number of caregivers, is that true?
Yes.
We are everywhere, every shift, every place, everywhere, and there's no doubt that that's the challenge, but we can experience workplace stressors. How many of you in this room have ever experienced stress at work? Or shall I say, how many minutes a day out of, say, whatever number of minutes do you experience stress at work? Give me a shout out. What has been your most stressful moment at work? It could be as a young student, it could be now, it could be whatever. What has been your most stressful unit? Most stressful moment? Go ahead.
Mine was when I told my director I took a break, and she told me, what is that?
What is that? Oh, that hurts.
She couldn't find me because I was on break, my dinner break, and next day I was reprimanded because she said, I called you at so and so, I said I was off, and I was having dinner, so my phone was off, and she said, what is that, a break? So I wasn't sure what to do next because I'm not supposed to take a break. That was very stressful.
Okay. And you had your hand raised as well?
Yeah, we've had a colleague who made a med error, and I was told to, I was supposed to go behind him and check him without him being told. But I was double checking his medication giving, and I said, not doing that. Not doing that.
Good for you, not doing that. Anybody else? You've never had a stressful moment, or you don't want to tell us about it?
I have one.
Yes?
I recently lost a patient, and as the leader of the team, took care of my team's grief and feelings about it, but I did not have anyone to talk to.
That's tough.
I'll share incivility.
Incivility?
Incivility between coworkers and just at a loss with how to handle it.
Okay. And I've had lots, so I've probably been a nurse more than all of you. So I've had a couple of stressful moments in my life. One I remember like as if it just happened. It was in a hospital in Florida. I was running the IV team. The patient had been overdosed on heparin. The physician wanted us to administer a dose of protamine sulfate that was absolutely inappropriate and would have caused the patient to crash within 5 minutes or less. And our team said, if you want that dose given, you give it yourself, and he gave it, and the patient died within 30 seconds. It was brutal. And the other one was when my husband, who is not as boisterous as everybody else's husbands, it seems, he's rather quiet and calm, generally. But when he was given 2 conflicting meds, a high dose of deltazone, 120 a day, and then got a blood clot and had a mini dose of heparin, very mini dose of heparin, and the two collided in his bloodstream, in his left thigh, causing a vasovagal reaction, a retroperitoneal bleed, and an arrest. And he wasn't even sick. There was nothing wrong with him. He had an infection. The lucky part was that it was a Friday at 12 noon when the good people are working, and he was able to be resuscitated by the code team that I led. But that's a stressful moment. So we've all had our moments in which we think, God, can anything else go wrong? Can anything else possibly go wrong? But the thing is that nurses are the greatest number, and the American Nurses Foundation found that 36% of nurses, I think the numbers are much higher, experience stigma associated with saying, I need a break. That should never happen. The awareness, the fact that you need a break, is recognition of who and what you are and what you represent, and the fact that you put that patient first, that you're aware that your behavior and your ability to control the situation is going to impact their outcomes. And if you don't do it right and you're not 100% there, then take that deep breath and take that break. But ignoring that or saying, what is a break, is a travesty. That pulls at the heartstrings. That's terrible. So the numbers do not lie. There is so much information in the literature about how many nurses report feeling burned out, having compassion fatigue, being totally disrupted at work. I'm part of the American Nurses Association fatigue group that is rewriting the standards for fatigue management. They are going probably to the legal department in January. But leading up to that, we've been exploring all of the literature and what is happening. The struggle is real. We know that. And the concerns lead to compassion fatigue. They lead to even more. And all of these are contributing factors. Stigma is probably the biggest. It delays diagnosis and treatment. It causes an increased risk of chronic illness and suicide. And the economic and social costs are overwhelming. So what are the 4 W's? The 4 W's is a technique that was co-developed by Jean Leakey of the University of Virginia's Darwin School and Neil Ogilvy of Peer Insights. And it's a process that is a framework, it's a model, it's a method that allows you to use design thinking, but a different method of design thinking that gets to the quick assessment of what's going on. So it looks at, we went through this, it looks at the whole concept of what is, what if, what wows, and what works. What if, and here's a really good example, what if we faced our reality that there is stigma, silence, and limited dialogue around the concept of mental health crisis in nursing. What if we looked at it with a different lens? That's what is. What if mental health was a shared responsibility? What if we all assumed responsibility for the mental health of caregivers and we reimagined strength through connection? And then whilst we implement an awareness at home, at work, and in the community in terms of who we are, what our role might be, regardless of the role that it is in nursing, and what we can do about it. And this is leaving space for real stories, for real actions, for people to connect and to talk to one another. And then what works is when you create these safe spaces, embedding practice. The what wows piece is really limited to time, talent, and resources. How much money do we have to make this happen? And often the resources are the biggest challenge. And what works is basically wash, rinse, and repeat. Find what works, refine it, and do it over and over and over again. So you're asking a good question: what is our reality? What if we looked at it with a different lens? What could we fix and do better given our resources? And then what will actually work? The method has worked in all disciplines, in all aspects of life, but it's time to think differently about mental health, because again, for every nurse who has ever suffered in silence, and there are so many of us, we need to be really aware of the fact that we can control to a limit how people perceive us. We can control to a limit our ability to function in our roles, given our responsibilities, knowing that we want the very best for all of our patients and the best outcomes, but we don't want to kill ourselves in the process. Because if we're not good to ourselves, we're good to no one. So I ask you to think a little bit differently about the way in which you approach stigma and mental health, because mental health matters. Reflections make you or help you identify what strategies eased your own stress. Like, what did you do? How did you feel, besides empty, when your colleague said, "What is a break?" And that awareness supports your growth, resilience, and better coping. The other thing is that I want you to think a little bit about, and these are our contact information, and we have dozens of references. I love your idea of a QR code. It makes perfect sense. I want you to think a little bit about chasing balance. Probably in 2012, I believe it was, Stigma asked me to write a book called B is for Balance. I wrote that book, and I wrote it for nurses. 2 years later, I wrote a second edition that won first place in the American Nurse Competition, because I changed it from nurses to everyone in life, because we all need some sort of balance. When I was at Stigma in San Antonio 2 years ago, they asked me to do the third edition, which then changed 6 months into the process, because it's time to stop chasing balance. We don't have it. It is not chaseable. It is not within our reach. And instead, we moved toward a concept of harmony. If we have harmony in life, and harmony in the workplace, and harmony in all that we do, we can pull those pieces together and make things work. But balance, and I always said life is a balancing act, it's not, because it's not within our reach. If instead we look toward harmony by designing ourselves using this type of a methodology to think about what could we do better, what are we doing now, what do we need to fix, and how can we fix it given what we have an opportunity to do a whole lot better, and to hopefully remove that stigma that for so long has plagued us and made us afraid to reveal what the real situation is, because we worry about what others will think. It's time to put aside what others will think, even if that other is your boss. Even if that other is your boss. Because maybe you're not working in the right place at the right time, and it's time to find something else to do that you would like better, that would bring you rewards, that would recognize who you are and what you bring to the table, and make you really feel good about the work that you do each and every day, caring for others while caring for yourself. Let's chuck the stigma and move on with our lives. Open to questions. Yes. My friend, what is your name?
My name is Peterson.
Peterson, it's nice to meet you.
How do you define harmony?
How do I define harmony?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. How do I define harmony? Harmony is a little piece of this and a little piece of that. It's like having a recipe that maybe if you had a good mom, I didn't, but if you had a good mom who shared recipes over life, yes, you had to be there for my TED Talk last Monday. I'm not telling you a lie. She was not a good mom. There's something wrong when your mom has 5 kids and she tells you every day that she didn't want any of you. There's something wrong with the picture. So if you had a good mom who passed on good recipes, I hope that I did, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. The harmony is what makes you happy, what brings you joy. How do you know how many hours you can give of yourself without draining yourself emotionally and physically? So you can do your best work and really feel good at the end of the day in terms of what you did while still caring for the people at home and letting them know that what they do and what they did in school and how they did their homework, or if somebody bullied them at school, has an impact on you as well. It's being able to pull those pieces together at the same time that you're getting between 7 and 9 hours of sleep a night, and you're gonna look at me like that's not possible, because we're forced to work overtime, we're forced to do back-to-back 12-hour shifts, we're forced to do whatever. Pulling those pieces together with a little bit of this and a little bit of that from that recipe, so that the recipe creates life that makes you feel whole at the end of the day. That's when you know you've reached some semblance of harmony. Do I do it really well? Hell no. No. Have I started to practice what I preach? Yes, but it took me a really long time in coming. It took missing a family event to make me realize, again, that if I didn't get a life, I wasn't going to have one.
But by the time you're done with the 12-hour shift, there's not much left to go home to.
Yes.
And go home to a family, and that's what I have to say publicly. I hate 12-hour shifts.
Right, and by the time, I don't know whoever thought of this.
You're drained by the end of the day, and you go home to a wife or a husband or whatever, and kids, you don't have much left to give.
You have nothing else to give. Because you're emotionally drained. You might have lost a couple of patients during that shift. You might have had other things happen. There might have been lots of blaming and shaming. There might have been accidents that happened along the way. There might have been so many patients who were admitted through the ER, or so many walk-ins, or so many something else, or so many catastrophes that you think, how can I possibly give one more ounce, one iota of myself when I am drained? And that's the time when you say, I need a break. That's the time when you say, I'm really sorry, I need to take off 24 hours and just be me. Because if I don't take care of me, I cannot give to anyone else. There's a reason they tell you to put on your own seatbelt first, isn't there? If you don't take care of yourself, you can take care of no one. Do you have a question?
I do. So I love these two talks together because I'm thinking about the Broset, and I'm thinking about how hard it was to get people to do the training.
Right.
And I wonder, Sharon, if you might speak to, because you're kind of talking about alignment, and I think about how the training might feel like an additional thing people have to do,
Right.
versus something they're being taught to protect themselves, right, and to make their work life easier, right? And there's something about the frame that I think sometimes we bring institutionally, not that you brought, right, as a researcher, but that probably the institution brings, where it is about doing more, and it's not about how do we support you, and that's the stigma piece, right? If you're suffering, that's your problem.
Exactly.
Don't complain about it. Show up. And I wonder if you can speak to like how systemically, the leaders in this room and the line workers in this room, like how we can all think about impacting the system to change the frame so that what's happening is supportive of, taking 24 hours feels like a dream, but even taking a dinner break, how the system might support
Taking a
that.
biological break is a dream for many of us, okay? The body is calling, but guess what? I think that that's really important, and I'd like to, in a non-promotional way, tell you that a colleague and I, both of whom do design thinking, created a book called Healing Healthcare. I don't want you to run out and get this book, but I want you to know the basis of this book. Over an 18-month period, we interviewed close to 300 nurse execs and nurse leaders. We asked the problems. What is the challenge with the workplace, with the workforce, and with what's going on today? What wisdom did we glean from our experience that we can use going forward that will fix this? And what we heard from every one of them is that nurses have the answers. If people would only listen to nursing, they could fix everything that is broken, because healthcare itself is poorly broken in this country and beyond. But if only we listen to the people who are on the front line, who are doing the work every single day, who are showing up, drained or not, because they know that they need to be there, we would have a fix. It wouldn't be a quick fix, but we would have the pieces in place to make that happen. The healthcare infrastructure needs to change so that the culture respects and values those of us who fill the slots, who take care of people day in and day out, and who do the hard work. Once that happens and that paradigm shifts, and I hope that many of us are around to see that happen someday, but once that happens, hopefully we will have a system in which nurses, new nurses, do not leave nursing after 18 to 36 months because they're already burned out. Right? Great question, thank you for that.
All right, as much as we would like to continue our discussion, we are at time. Once again, Sharon,